Hi, it's David.
Hi, David. Jason Saulnier here.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Not much. How's it going with you these days?
You know, right now, I just returned back from South America. I did a trip down there with a project called Hail that I got a call to put together back in, I think, September or October. And so the call came to me, and immediately I thought of Jimmy DeGrasso, of course, to play drums on it. And I thought of Ripper Owens to sing. And then it was suggested Andreas Kisser from Sepultura to play guitar, which I thought was a great idea since, you know, he's down in South America already. So we put it together, and we basically played some of our own songs from our own legacies as well as, you know, some cover tunes. And it was really just a fun time out. And to the point now that we're getting offers left and right from all around the world for the band to go out and, you know, to go do some touring in some far away and distant lands. So that's kind of been a pretty fun thing that just landed in my lap. And beyond that, of course, I had the F5 record, which we released in the U.S. back in August and has now come out in Europe and Japan just last week.
Mm-hmm. The Reckoning.
Yes, exactly.
Very good CD. Any good reviews on
you.
that? The people love it?
Yeah, it's, you know, the reviews we've gotten on it have been really strong. I think, you know, it was a nice progression forward from the last record. I really liked the first record that we did, A Drug for All Seasons. But I think as with everything, you know, bands grow and move forward. And now, of course, being our second record and having done you know, a pretty healthy dose of touring on the first record and everything, you learn things and grow musically. And so I think The Reckoning is a good second record for the band.
So you also work for PV as a representative?
I do a thing for them called an artist relations position, where I basically help secure other artists to use their gear. I kind of look at it, it's almost like an extension of an endorsement of sorts. And it's interesting because now there's a few other manufacturers out there that do the same thing with some other well-known artists that they've hired them to go out and, you know, help secure other people using the products. And yeah, it's been cool. I went to college, actually. I just graduated a couple years ago. I finished up a business degree that I'd started working on in the late 90s. And so that was a cool thing to do, you know, while I was working. I mean, I don't work at the PV office, you know. I basically do it in my travels while I'm you know, performing and recording and working and everything, you know, on a music and artistic side. So it was a cool thing to just gain an understanding of through education in college, as well as, you know, having the position that I do with PV. It was cool to just get exposed to the other side of life and understand a lot of things about international business as well.
Well, I'm glad you got your degree into this.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I was one of these guys that, you know, when I was a young kid, I mean, my whole mission was to go rock the free world, you know. So I moved to California when I was 18 and right straight out of high school, and moved out to L.A. and, you know, got, you know, my things lined up and you know, I've had a good music career as a player. And so it was cool years later to then go to college. I mean, I certainly appreciated it a lot more later in my life, whereas I don't think I probably would have appreciated it very much early on.
So going to back in the good old days, Megadeth era, you know, with the P-Cells era, you played BC Rich Mockingbirds, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What transposed you to go and pick out a BC Rich and not something else? Was it the look, the image?
You know, when I was about 16, you know, I grew up in the Midwest in Minnesota, and you know, that was right around the time that some really cool guitars were coming out. You know, the Ibanez Iceman that like Paul Stanley was using. Mm-hmm. Then there were some radical new companies like BC Rich, Dean Guitars had first started back then, and you know, as a young rocker kid, man, you know, pointy guitars are cool. And so I couldn't wait to get a BC Rich. And so I bought a BC Rich, and which cost me a fortune as a kid, you know, to be able to afford one. But it was funny because then when I moved to L.A., Dave was also playing BC Rich, and our first manager had introduced us to Gar Samuelson to play drums for the band, and Gar was actually a general manager of BC Rich, so
wow.
all the planets lined up on that one. Yeah, so it was cool, but it was but it was nice because it was an honest, legitimate endorsement because we already played the stuff and we already liked it, and it was just kind of a sort of fell in our lap.
So Gar Samuelson was a general manager for BC Rich?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he's the drummer.
Yeah, we always thought it was a little crazy they would leave a good job like that to go on tour with a rock and roll band, but we were glad he did. I think sometimes the people in the company, they were very they loved Gar. I mean, Gar was a very lovable, likable guy, so when they let him go out and do the Killing Is My Business tour, they actually kept his job for him, so when he got back he could go to work and be able to pay his bills.
Because Megadeth did not pay bills at that time.
Well, anybody who gets this interview, who's in a rock and roll band, that your first few tours, sometimes your first few albums, sometimes the first few many years of your career even can, you're certainly not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the love of the music and the love of playing. And even though the myth sometimes is, you put a record out and you're a rock star and you're rich. The truth is that doesn't happen for most. So, I think and especially probably more so in this day and age now with all the internet downloading and file sharing. And, I think if you read the paper in the last 5 years, that, the music business, as far as the record industry side of it, has been on a downturn. So, there's probably even less money in it now than there was years ago. But, if money's the reason you're in the music business, then you're in the wrong business.
Yes. So do you see an upside to the internet with the music scene in the future, or is it this how it's going to be going now?
Yeah, I do. I think, years ago, Capitol Records put together the first artist website for us, when we were making the Euthanasia record. And I loved it. I mean, I had started getting into computers back in 1991 when we came off the Rust in Peace tour, and I was writing, lyrics and things for Countdown to Extinction and that, and so I loved it. And I started to, do accounting on it, and I just tried to use my computer any way possible for recording. Pro Tools wasn't as developed then, but any way possible I could use it. So the internet thing, and then of course, digital recording, and now. Then eventually, obviously, every band started getting a website, and then it turned into MySpace and Facebook, and on and on and on it goes now. But I think that it's just part of. I think one of the best things that the internet is good for any artist, whether you're Bono or you're, just a young little neighborhood startup band. I think it's just cool to have a kind of a hands-on, more personal approach to your fans. Mm-hmm. And I know, like in metal music, I mean, back in 1983 when I first moved to L.A., the whole tape trading thing was huge back then. And that's how bands got known around the world, was through tape trading. And so I see the internet as just a more sophisticated version of tape trading in a lot of ways.
Which can be good in a sense.
Yeah, I think it's great for advertising and marketing and, and all of that. So I think that on that side of it, it's good. I mean, I think, really in order to really make money and have be able to kind of have music be your only career of sorts so that you can support yourself financially, I still think you need some type of record company support, because you mostly need that level of money in order to, properly promote a product. I mean, it's like the guy who goes out and tries to build a car in his garage versus Ford Motor Company, So I think, the independent thing is a great concept. And I think more and more the industry is getting more to where the record side of it is being placed back in the artist's hands, which I think is good. Because, I mean, let's face it, how many times on radio and video, we're basically forced to like whatever has the most money behind it to be played on radio, on radio and TV. And, I think we all know there's a lot more variety out there. So I think, things like satellite radio, internet radio, even now, of course, YouTube is, I mean, I probably watch more YouTube than I do TV anymore, So I think to a large degree, the internet has given us, if nothing else, a lot of options.
Going back to Ellefson, do you recall what bands you would be with before Megadeth? Or did he just jump from BC Rich to Megadeth?
He was in a jazz group, actually, with Chris Poland called the New Yorkers. And they were a really, really progressive jazz group that played around L.A., similar to probably Mahavishnu Orchestra meets The Who or something. Mm-hmm. And I never saw them there. That was kind of before I got to L.A., but that's what they were doing. Both Chris and Gar grew up in the same neighborhoods together back in Dunkirk, New York. So they moved from New York together out to L.A., and then they started up the New Yorkers.
Going to your bass gig, and I know your DIs and your bass rig, like your bass cabinets, what do you use live? Like, do you mic the bass amp? Do you DI it, or what do you do?
Yeah, I usually do both. I like to put a mic on it because a mic, either like an EV, like an RE20, or else even just a Shure SM57 is usually a pretty good mic, for bass and guitars even. And because that just has a nice tone to it. You hear a real natural tone of the from the player, I think, from that side of it. But then also having a DI is also a nice, really just a thick, really a true sound coming from the bass. And also if you wire the DI properly, that way if the amp ever goes out, the DI keeps you going,
right,
through the PA system. So that's pretty much how I've done it always through my whole career, is a mic and a DI. And, for cabinets like with the F5 stuff, I always use a pair of PD810s. And then I've got a variety of different heads that I use, also mostly the Tour 700 series.
So for this, you basically, do you play in stereo also, or just mono on bass?
Nope, I never play stereo, only mono. I take out of one head, I usually hook up two cabinets. And sometimes if it's a larger hall, I'll put a power amp in there to get more power.
All right.
Preamp out of the head and go right into the power amp, and then let the power amp power the cabinets.
Going back to early on in Megadeth career, Kerry King played for Megadeth for a very short stint. You got anything that we don't know yet of that?
Kerry was a great rhythm guitar player. I mean, man, he really, he always said that when he saw Dave play with Metallica at the Whiskey a couple years before that it changed his life. And I think it rearranged how he thought about music. I think it changed, from what he told me, it changed Slayer. Slayer went from being almost like a LA cover band to, really focusing, writing cool new original material. And so Kerry played with us for a short while, I mean, as they were trying to get Slayer off the ground. And I think Kerry maybe was a little, maybe he probably did it because he was impressed with Dave, and so he took the gig. But I think once he got up to San Francisco and everybody started, they met Kerry and they went, dude, when are you going to put Slayer, when's Slayer coming up? I think Kerry realized that Slayer had a future.
Right.
So when we went back home, he got Slayer, really into high gear, and which is a good thing, because then ultimately we got to have the big four out of that whole thing.
Any good Jeff Young stories?
Jeff was a good player. I mean, I don't think a good fit, in that band on most other levels, because he didn't grow up a heavy metal kid. And I think that, when you're playing in a band like that, that's got to be in your blood, really, from your garage band days, I think. But Jeff was certainly a great player, and he saved the day on So Far So Good So What, that's for sure. And, back in those days, he and I used to room together, because we'd all have to double up in hotel rooms and stuff. So I spent a lot of time playing, guitar with Jeff. And it was a great guitar player, and I played a lot of guitar back then, so it was really, I still do actually, but it was really, I think, good for my chops playing with Jeff. He showed me a lot of cool things, and I actually learned a lot from Jeff.
Yeah, he's a great guitar player, one of my favorite albums, and the solos are awesome.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
In My Darkest Hour, as you wrote that with Dave, how long did it take you to come up with that idea?
You know, a lot of that idea really came when the day that we got the call that Cliff Burton had been killed in the bus crash. That song pretty much, you know, Dave composed most of the lyrics to it. It just kind of fell right out, you know. And that's, you know, it's funny because a lot of the best songs, in my opinion, are ones that the bulk of the song really just kind of creates itself on the spot. You know, it's almost like the human spirit comes through, which is, I think that's what we enjoy about music. And as maybe dark and somber as that song is, it reflected the moment.
One of the best songs Megadeth ever wrote, I figure, for radio broadcasting. Am I correct?
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, I certainly back in those days, you know, and again, you know, songs always had a lot of tempo shifts and a lot of breaks and things like that, which, you know, in those days is kind of disruptive for radio play. It's become a little more commonplace now. But you know, that was probably, you know, I think at that point with the third album, you know, that we had done at that point was really starting to focus, you know, really what encapsulated the band, you know, as far as riffs, melody, and being able to shift in and out of different tempos and create songs that were more than just these 3-minute pop songs, and really creating more like opuses.
So what are you going to be doing in 2009, basically, to continue on with Hail?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I've got some F5 shows that look like they're coming down the pike. Like I say, my phone's ringing like crazy for Hail to go out and do shows. I've got a couple of other records that I played on that look like they're going to be releasing here shortly, so those will come out, maybe even shooting some videos and things, at least for one of them.
Great.
And, yeah, so just, you know, I just kind of take everything a day at a time as it comes, and, you know, rather than try to plan too much of that. I mean, I didn't plan too much else in my life other than moving to California, you know what I mean? And that was something that kind of hit me in the gut one day, like, man, you need to get to LA. So I just follow my gut and try to, you know, just keep myself available for things. I find that I'm having the most fun like that.
And we're glad you went to LA, because we wouldn't have had Megadeth come out.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, Dave, that was a pleasure talking to you. David
Ellefson.
Yeah, do you still own that BC Rich from the old days?
You know what, man? I don't. There was years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago, we did a big auction and got rid of just a ton of gear that we had in the warehouse. You know, a lot of old Harkey cabinets, Marshall cabinets, guitars. So we did a big auction, and which I thought was kind of cool because I was able to let a lot of the fans buy that stuff.
Was this a Megadeth auction?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So some lucky fan got that bass.
Ooh, some lucky fan. Yeah, somebody came to me recently about it and said they wanted to try to donate it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So I thought that was cool. I mean, if anything, that would be a good, that would be a nice gesture to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see if it gets in there or not.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you for talking, man. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome.
And
thanks, Jason.